All right. All right. Let me get this going. And
Yeah. Now where the truth in this, I need some proof in this, at least a witness will make some sense of this business. You know the system we address with cynicism. Lord knows that someone's sinning, selling souls, just a sacrificial lamb to some crooked man's underhanded plan. Judging brothers like you honest, shall I call you honor when the justice escapes? Another cold case got me thinking, am I taking a bait? If I make about race, embrace baiters, play the race card. I race y'all minds, running my rhymes, been mind numbing, my time's coming. It's almost like the second coming of Christ. The way I get these beats life, it's hard to get me off your head like lights. I roll the dice, not sure the price of this wordplay. I know they watching every word I say. It ain't safe to keep it real with the fake ones. They guns been loaded, now the city's imploding. Ain't it a shame that they blame Snowden?
What's up? This is Ramon Absolute Robinson, and I'm here with my two amazing friends, Brandon Freeney.
What's going on? What's going on?
And Chris Jacques. Got to make sure I say that right, pronounce that properly. So this is our first show. It's called Conversations with My Father. Am I saying that correctly? Make sure
that's right. You know,
that sounds about right.
Okay, great. So the premise of this show is to talk to our fathers and the men in our community, mothers as well.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Right? And really catalog their experiences. Not with an opinionated, trying to get our point across to an audience, but really find out who these people are. Really catalog that information, those experiences that they've had up to this point. A lot of our parents are very successful, but when we see success, a lot of times we're looking at money, right? And that's not where success is. It's overcoming those obstacles that have been put in your way,
right,
and being able to make a way for yourself and your family, right? And so this is, our parents have done this. All of our parents.
Absolutely.
Everybody in this room, right? And so...
And those listening, too.
Correct, and a lot of the listeners. But how are we cataloging that information?
We're doing it now.
Perfect. Okay. So my father was calling me now, right? So he's like, I know he's like, where's this boy at? He better get on the line, because I called him just a second ago.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call him again, and what we're going to do is we're going to actually get into a conversation with him about his experiences, right?
Okay.
So I'm first going to, ask him when he was born, where was he born, right? And then have that conversation about his experiences growing up. So I know a lot of these stories, but every time, we talk to our parents about something, they tell us a little bit more information. Do you notice
new
that?
details emerge.
Right.
Every time we discuss something like a former story, we get a little bit bigger piece, or it's almost like, what do you call it? When you're watching a movie and then there's a particular scene and then you watch another movie or a later part in the movie and it goes back. Is it like called redcon or reconning, or what is it called?
I'm not sure.
There's a word for it. Redcon, I think it's called, or something along those lines. And what it is that it takes you back to something, and a new development helps you see the scene you already saw in a different way. That's how it is with these stories with some of our parents.
Absolutely.
They tell us something, and like they give you that extra nuance, and now you're like, oh, that's what you meant by such and such, as opposed to the way we saw it before. So I don't know.
Let me ask you guys this before you call Pops. Do you think that's just them seeing us as adults now and giving us a little more?
I definitely think that's what it is. I think when we started off, they knew that we couldn't hear all the details. So now that we got older, we're like, dang, and our perspectives change as well. So no, I definitely think that's what it is. But I use that analogy simply because, when they use it in cinema, it's dynamic. It's like something that's really dope. I don't know. I can think of the new Spider-Man movie was an example. I don't know if y'all saw it.
I haven't seen
It's pretty good.
Okay, no
spoilers.
spoilers.
I ain't gonna ruin it, but they use a scene from a completely different movie, and they bring. It was cool how they brought that together, and I was like,
so
wow,
they just showed an extra layer or gave us a little.
And it's
extra.
2 different studios too, bro. That's the dope thing. So this was the first time the merger actually made a lot of sense, because they used
Fox.
Yeah, because remember that Spider-Man is done through that studio,
or
not
Sony.
Yeah. I think so.
It was Sony with Spider-Man, I think.
Yeah,
Fox is X-Men.
Deadpool and all that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So then my bad. But it would have been dope if that was a relevant point.
No, it was. It still was.
No, it did come from Fox.
Point.
Okay, so
but you know what? So I think that's definitely one piece to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also having a child of my own, certain things I talk to my daughter about, it's like I can't go into details because I don't want her emotionally to feel a certain way. You understand? Like a child is fragile, and if you tell them something that's happened to you, especially with it being your parent, you might take it a certain way. And so I think our parents, as just protection, don't tell us certain things until we get older and we're able to deal with, what happened at that time.
Right.
I'm with that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay, so I'm gonna call my dad now. We're gonna get him on the line.
Let's get him on the line.
Talk to him, make sure we keep this clean. So it's ringing now. Let me see here.
Yeah,
he should be available.
Technology.
Hey, what's up, Dad?
It's just awesome to hear somebody say that. What's up, Dad?
We're live now, right? And so we were just doing the intro, and so I'm gonna bring you in. I'm gonna put you on speaker. And so I'm just going to ask you some questions. Obviously, I know the answers to, but so that the audience can get to know who you are.
Let's get some game.
Here. All right. Okay, my phone is
Conversation number 1 with Mr. Ramon's father.
All right, Dad. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, so how are we looking on the vocals, Chris? We're good?
Let me check again. Say it one more time.
So, Dad, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we're perfect.
Okay, all right,
so good.
Perfect. So, so my father is Carl Robinson, and if you can tell him when you were born and where you were born.
I was born in 1950 in Fort Worth, Texas.
So, 1950 in Texas. That's a serious time frame, right? So
now you know why I'm like I am.
Yes. So we've had this conversation, but if you can give us a little bit of what it was like growing up, I guess, up until high school in Texas in 1950, because this is before the Civil Rights movement, correct?
Oh yeah, it was really bad in Texas, especially the part of Texas where we lived in East Texas. And one of the worst things about it was that black people mostly made money in agriculture. They mostly made money like picking cotton and watermelon, whatever it was that people were growing. They wouldn't give black people jobs because they wanted them to do that. And that's what they did. They gave them low pay and, with seasonal work, a lot of older people was always in debt because they weren't working seasonal. I mean, it was like that all over. There was no minimum wage for, like when I was really young. And I think the first minimum wage might have been like 75 cents an hour or something,
It's crazy.
Wow. Jeez.
75 cents
an hour, yeah. And so let me ask you this: like, what was your first job?
My first job, I remember, picking cotton when I was like maybe in the second grade with my relatives. They'd give me a little cotton sack. I'd be out there picking cotton. They'd be teaching you how to pick cotton. And you're thinking, I got to do this for the rest of my life. You're thinking all kinds of stuff. I mean, I'm like second grade or something, and just the way that they were and the way that your parents taught you how you had to be in order to make it in that society, So to be honest with you, we interacted with them with whites when it came to that, but most of the time we were segregated.
And so, I mean, it's like the housing and stuff. You just lived in the projects or whatever area.
Whatever area. Even if you lived in a house, it was in the area where only black people lived. We had a black elementary school. I mean, we had.
Now this is 1950.
This is what?
This is the 50s.
This is the 50s. So around 1956.
No, you said second grade. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's around 1956.
Yeah. So, but you could see that things were things were starting to change just slightly because of really who my family was and who my mother and father were, the way that they were. But my family, our family, was the first black family to settle in Central Texas 160 years ago.
And that was in Pflugerville, was it?
That was in Pflugerville, Texas, right outside of Austin. I just pulled my great-great-great-grandmother's will out of my safe because she had 9 kids by a white man who was her slave owner, and he couldn't marry her. It was against the law for black and white to get married. He had 2 families. He had a white family and he had a black family, and he wanted to be with my grandmother. And what he did, because he couldn't marry her, he gave her 280 acres of land. And they didn't record the deed properly, so when I was like, I guess I was about 20, it was right around when I first met your mother, I had to go back, find her original will, record the deed and everything to keep some of the rich white ranchers from taking that land. So I have a copy of her original will. Wow. And that's how I got them to back off of the land, and I had to get a survey and get everything done, but she left a lot of land.
And that was, you say that was 160 years ago? How long? Well, that's when they settled on the land, right?
A little bit after that, but I'm saying that our family was the first black family in Central Texas. In fact, Uncle Sonny used to always be mentioned in Austin's Black History Month. And, the really thing about Uncle Sonny, and one of the oddities about him, is the land that he inherited. Now, this is on my dad's side.
So Uncle Sonny is your father's brother, right?
Yeah, so this is on my dad's side, but they inherited a lot of land too. And what they did was, they all would just keep the land, sell it amongst themselves and stuff like that. Well, Dell Computer came in. And this is right at Uncle Sonny, this is the latter part of his life. Dell Computer offered to buy the land by the square foot.
Oh, wow, jeez.
Oh, wow.
And so he made the paper because he turned down millions of dollars. So that he said that was land that was given down, and that was from our ancestors. That was the first black ones in Texas, and he thought that if he sold them that land, that it would just be sacrilege. He just would not even consider
it. Was more. It meant more than the money.
Right. It was way more than the money for him.
Yeah.
I want to. I don't mean to cut you off, but you said something to me the other day that I also wanted us to discuss, which I think we don't discuss a lot, in the community. Is I remember you said that you were riding with the family one time when you were younger, and the police had pulled your father over and beat him, and then just let him go, and then you kind of really just started to understand the issues that he had. Having no rights and being treated so poorly.
I understood, there were a lot of men, a lot of black men died from alcohol-related diseases.
Right.
And a lot of black people died in really horrific accidents because there was no laws against drinking and driving. There was no seat belts. There was nothing. If you took a long trip, everybody knew that your parents were going to get a fit, some puffs and some ice and some mix or whatever, and that's how they traveled. They drank and drove. That's just the way it was. A lot of black people, a lot of black men died from tobacco-related stuff. And what people don't understand is the government subsidized the tobacco industry. They gave the tobacco industry millions and millions of dollars and encouraged people to smoke. The government encouraged them to smoke. Just like the government encouraged people to segregate, to not integrate with black people. That was part of redlining. That's why we couldn't live in white neighborhoods. That was a FHA thing. That was a government thing.
Wow.
Most people think the other way about the FHA, but that's just not true. FHA, they set up the first federal housing loans to protect white fish with Lyndon Johnson. My father used to cook for Lyndon Johnson. My father's one of his best friends was Lyndon Johnson's chef. He was a black guy named Edgar. And him and my father would, they always party on the weekend and stuff together, and they would go fishing with Lyndon Johnson. So my dad really knew how to BS people. And that's how he, got in with Johnson, and he was really just like a gopher for him. Because it really couldn't do, really wasn't going to do nothing else but all the dirt and all the other stuff and prostitution and all kinds of, moonshining, just all kinds of illegal stuff that Johnson was involved with. They owned the only TV station in Austin, Texas. It was Channel 7, and that was the only TV station. Lyndon Johnson and Lady Bird Johnson was the actual owner, but that's who owned the TV station.
And it was only just one station in that part of Texas? Wow, he owned the only station. That's crazy.
But he made all the money. All the advertisers had to use him.
And the messages were...
Yeah, all the messaging. Yeah, he would control the message if it's just only...
Exactly. He dominated Texas politics.
Okay, and when was this happening? So by this time, you were in your 20s or 30s?
How old were you?
Oh, no. I was still a kid.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Oh, no, I was still... I'm telling you how I was when I was still a kid. I was still...
Okay, so...
Like when that was going on,
so it was still the 50s. It was still the early 60s.
So 9 years old. So this is like the 1959, 1960 around, right? So
this is before he became president.
Yeah, this is before he became president. Yeah. Okay. And so, as a matter of fact, you were on the parade route when Kennedy was killed, correct?
Get up.
Right. I was.
Can you give us that story a little bit detail, like the school that you were going to and what you were doing at that time?
My mother had moved to El Paso, and because my father was a really violent drinker and he was real abusive to my mother, so she took us from Central Texas and we moved to Southwest Texas, and she divorced him. So she took all 5 of us, all of the kids together. She kept us all together, and we drove to El Paso, and we actually settled in El Paso. But my mother didn't like the schools in El Paso because it was real different. Now, you got to think about what I'm saying when I say moving to Austin to El Paso. I lived in an all-black culture. I very, very rarely interacted with white people. And then when my mother moved from Austin to El Paso, all of a sudden I'm in an almost all Mexican culture. And the school that I went to, the elementary school that I went to, I was the only black kid in my class. I never seen Mexicans, never tasted Mexican food, never even heard Spanish spoken. And from 1 week I was in an all black environment, and then I'm all in an all Mexican environment. And it wasn't that my mother didn't want us to be in that environment, but she wanted us to get our schooling in this black Seventh-day Adventist school. She wanted us to really be pushed and to really excel academically. So she sacrificed, and we went back to school in Dallas. My sister and I, my sister was... she was in the 9th grade, I was in the 7th grade, and that day is just burned in my mind because we were all the school kids all got together. You know, we were told how to dress and everything. You know, we wore our school colors, and then they took all of us to Main Street in Dallas, and we lined the streets, and there were kids from other schools all up and down the parade route. There were kids all over. Just everybody wanted to see the president. And it was beautiful and sunny and everything. And when his limousine came towards us, it was almost like, it was just unbelievable because we could see him and Jackie. They were really close to us. We were right on the curb. They were waving and smiling. They went down, they passed us, and then a little ways down, maybe 6 blocks from where we were, we could hear what we thought were fireworks. We got excited because we go, oh, that's like fireworks. That's what we thought it was. But when they loaded us on the bus and they took us back to school, we realized, because everybody was out, all the administrators were outside crying, the school was shut down. And it was real strange because it was sunny and bright early part of the day, but after that incident happened, it turned real cold, and a real bad cold front came into Dallas, and I never will forget that because that's, you know, it was just burned in my mind, and I always thought that Johnson did it. I always thought that, you know, that it was some unscrupulous people from Texas that did it because of where it happened and how Dallas was. And then Jack Ruby shot Lee Harvey Oswald in the Dallas Police Department. Mm. You know, the so-called assassin, right. The guy who was the assassin, he was shot in the Dallas Police Department with policemen, federal agents, Secret Service, FBI, CIA, all of them were there, and he still managed to come in amongst all of them and shoot this man in the stomach and kill him so he wouldn't talk.
So you figured there was definitely way more to this story.
Oh, yes. See, if news was the way that it was now, like it is today, if it was like that then, because, like I said, there was like 1 or 2 stations.
Wow.
You know, they controlled all of the information, and you just knew that how could the president of the United States get shot on Main Street in Dallas, Texas, and then the assassin shot Lee Harvey Oswald in the Dallas Police Department, being guarded by Dallas policemen, undercover, FBI, all these people were there.
Yeah, so there was obviously more to that.
Yes. You know, come on, man. The president gets shot in the head on the street in front of a bunch of people. Yeah. And then the other crazy twist on this thing was I was standing a little ways down from the first Neiman Marcus store. And they used to be notorious for not letting black people come in there to shop.
That's not surprising.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
But the twist is that years later, when I lived in Florida, I wound up suing Neiman Marcus for racial profiling lawsuit, and I won the largest profiling lawsuit in Florida history.
Oh, wow. When did this happen?
it happened in 1998. Wow. But I wouldn't settle with them, so I fought them for 7 years before court. So it was about 2004 or 5 when I got a jury verdict of $2.64 million.
Dang.
Yeah, so we'll get into that in a little bit. But I also want so Kennedy was killed 1963, and then so that obviously left a huge, I guess, kind of.
I always said that I would never live in Texas, and when I said when I got a certain age, I would leave Texas, and I would never live there. I would never live there because of the way that they were. They were so racist. There were towns in Texas when we were kids. They would drive, especially in East Texas, Marshall and some of those places, they would hang black effigies on the city limit signs and like saying like all niggas better be out of town by sundown. Well, this is what's gonna happen.
And so
you didn't have to do nothing.
Right.
You just had to be down. There's a lot of lynchings in Texas. A lot of lynchings.
And so, I mean when they lynch somebody...
Huh?
No, I was going to ask, so when they lynch somebody, they never really put anybody in jail for lynching anybody. It was just
not.
Almost kind of one of the things that they just did, huh?
It was not illegal to lynch a black person.
Was it law enforcement that was doing this?
There was no law. It was not illegal to lynch a black person.
Was this law enforcement that would do stuff like this as well?
Yes, all of them.
Oh no, but was it mostly law enforcement or was it mostly private citizens?
It was everybody.
Okay.
If they found a target, if they found somebody new walking through town at night or whatever reason they wanted to, there was never any reason for them to lynch people the way they did. They just did it. And it was to put fear in black people, and it did put fear in black people.
What I can understand, actually, even you explaining it like that, I don't know if we need to, do I save this for later, but I just wanted to kind of ask a perspective question. Like, I would assume that when it was happening, people knew, people like yourself, people within the black community, and would probably tell people like, guard this, or this is a sign that something like this might be happening. Did it get to a point where, because like I watch shows like, like Walking Dead and those type of shows where it's like the whole area, there's enemies, there's zombies, right. there's would it get to a point where if something like that was going to happen, the whole town knew, and so
well, what happened, these things were like flare-ups, and like parents would do everything they could to keep their kids as far away from that as possible. But one of the things that happened, like if we traveled in Texas at night, I told you that everybody drank. My mother and father and uncles and aunts, they didn't travel unless they were drinking, and they also didn't travel without guns. And they let you know that they are carrying guns because at any point, white people could block the highway off. You could get out of the car and they mess everybody up.
See, that's crazy.
So
that's crazy to
me. We ain't going down without them going down. So they just always packing loaded weapons. Always.
Allow to keep from
always to protect the kids, to protect the family. That's what they did. You couldn't travel from Austin to Houston and a black family without having weapons to protect yourself at night. And the other thing was, they used to have what was called the Green Book. I don't know if y'all ever heard of that.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, they actually did a movie about that recently.
The Green Book was one of the things that was because black people couldn't stay anywhere. And so you had to make sure that when you got to a certain destination somewhere, that there was some place that you could stay and eat and all that, because you couldn't eat everywhere. I mean, you could be in a Greyhound bus in Texas, and if you got off the Greyhound bus and walked off in the station to go get some food, they'll stop you at the door if you black and tell you, go around back, take your ass around back. We don't serve no niggas up here. That's how they talk to you.
Mm.
So me traveling through Texas as a kid, if it ever stopped in a situation like I never got off the bus. I would just carry me some or just stay hungry. And most black people carried their lunch; they wouldn't get off. That's the way it was. I mean, it was horrific. you know, and to come up and to be having to, you know, raise your kids in that kind of environment, and then, you know, not being able to go and get a job like every other man go get a job. You got to go do this or do something, you know, you don't really want to do that. You're not using any of your talent to do. They didn't think that, you know, they actually thought that they were smarter than black people and wouldn't give them the opportunity to do that kind of job. So just, it was horrific. It really was. But like as you see things change, like when things started changing, like in Austin, black kids and white kids definitely did not play with each other or against each other. It was black on black and white on white. Never no intermingling at all. That was a no-no.
And this was in Austin, Texas?
Yes. But not just Austin. It was like that in, you know, Dallas and Houston and, you know, it was like that all over Texas until things started changing. And one of the things that changed college football a lot, because college football, that's the SEC. That's why I don't really like the SEC. SEC was all the most racist schools, the Alabamas and Mississippis, where the federal government had to come in to guard students. You know, Medgar Evers and some of these people that were going to Mississippi and stuff, they would have to guard them just so they could get to class. And you know, when the first elementary school integration was, I think it might have been in Arkansas, and Eisenhower had to send the army out to protect the elementary kids.
Yeah.
And the people that were threatening the elementary kids weren't the other kids; they were their parents.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, it was a turbulent, really turbulent time, and then, you know, I'm sure everybody's heard about the 60s, and they always say that the most turbulent year in the United States was 1968. That was the year that I graduated from high school.
Oh, wow. So
1968.
That's the year Martin Luther King was killed, too, correct?
Martin Luther King.
And Bobby.
Malcolm X.
And Bobby, yeah.
Bobby Kennedy.
Wow.
So I turned really militant, and I moved to California.
And that's when the Panthers.
Let me ask you this, because I never asked you this before, but I've heard different stories about Martin Luther King, and some people felt like Martin Luther King was kind of a sellout, and you know, people just had different perspectives of who he was in the black community. How did you feel about Martin Luther King at, you know, the time before he was killed, though?
You know, I had, like I told you, the information that we got was always from white man perspective.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So we had to automatically block that out.
Mm.
You know, and that's not easy to do.
No, it's not.
You know, and so when you talk about Martin Luther King, one of the great things about Martin Luther King is he taught people different techniques. Like, he used the boycott.
Right.
Okay, y'all ain't gonna treat us on the bus right. Y'all ain't gonna sit at the front of the bus. We won't use the bus. We'll walk and give each other rides and do whatever we have to do. Well, the bus system collapsed, and they had to hire bus drivers and treat people better for them to get back on the bus in order for that bus company to make it. So he did that with the garbage. He just did things that were different. Malcolm X was completely different. You know, Malcolm X, you know, he had more of a violent, you know, twist to his rhetoric, and Some say FBI had him assassinated. I believe that. But back then, if you didn't believe like they believe, they thought they had the right to kill you. They feel like that now.
Right. We see that now. Definitely see that now.
So, but now, they let you know they didn't care if it was a president. They don't care if he's running for president. And, hey, ain't no niggas powerful enough that we can't take them out.
Yeah.
So, let's put it like this. Like I said, I was more militant, and I didn't care about a lot of the other stuff. I'm not a real religious person, but I still respected Martin Luther King because he brought different techniques to getting his point across. You didn't expect Malcolm X to go to the White House and sit down with the president. Well, Martin Luther King did that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They were just different. And so, but everybody had to sacrifice something to advance this cause of people being treated like human beings. And so, it was like the military. I was determined that I wasn't going to get drafted. And if they did draft me, I was going to do whatever I had to do to let them know I wasn't going to the military. My mother had saved money for me to go to Canada, Mexico. We were right on the border. And I was real cocky about it. I wasn't going to go. And I told them. I had to go. They drafted me. I went down. I took the test. And a lot of my friends would try to fail the test, but I didn't want them thinking that I was stupid. I did real well on that test. And then they came to me with that bullshit. Like, you scored real high on the test and all this other stuff. But you know what's going to happen. They're going to do like they did all of my other friends. They sent them to the front line, and they all came back dead, messed up, whatever, and nobody had nothing else to do with them. And I was determined that, because, this is Lyndon Johnson now that's doing this war. All the stuff that I knew about Lyndon Johnson and I thought I killed Kennedy, he wasn't going to send me to Vietnam. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Especially if you already had this view of him.
Yeah, I would already go to jail. See, most people don't have that perspective because they don't know how I was raised.
Right.
But this is real. That's it. That was too ironic to me. There's two twists. Am I going to let Lyndon Johnson send me to my death? He don't care.
This is the Vietnam War? Which war was this at that time?
Vietnam.
Yeah.
Brutal war. Brutal. American soldiers was going over there and slaughtering those people.
Right.
Dropping bombs on them. They dropped more bombs on them than they dropped on anybody. Cambodia and Laos and stuff, they still got so many ordnance still there from that war. Because if they didn't drop them in Vietnam, they would come and drop them over in Laos and just drop them and stuff like they had no respect for the land. There's people still going over there and finding mines and kids being blown up by mines and stuff.
To this day they're still finding a lot of that, the mines and bombs that they dropped over there from the 60s. They're still finding them, right?
Viciousness.
And even in Japan, a lot of their children are being born with birth defects from the bombs that we dropped there as well.
Yeah.
Right. So, what were your thoughts? Were you more into Malcolm than Martin at that time?
No. It wasn't a more or because, like your aunt, she was in the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers tried to recruit me. I didn't want to be a part of no organization.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because I found faults in a lot of them and seen a lot of crazy stuff going on, especially in the Black Panthers. I was right there. I lived right there in Oakland.
Right.
I bought a house in Oakland. I lived right there. And but it was pretty violent back then. The Black Panthers, one of the things that I respect about them is, like, if the police shot at them, they shot at them back.
Right.
And so, like I said, I was militant then, and I remember one time when I started respecting the Panthers is when they marched on the state capitol of Sacramento with shotguns and guns to show that they got the same right as white people to bear arms. And I started respecting them more then, because they used to wouldn't do that.
Mm.
You know, like you see white people, they go to a thing and they're walking around with an assault rifle.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Black person do that, he's gonna get shot.
Oh yeah, they gonna shoot you.
That's what I'm saying. So obviously I had a lot of respect for them because they all got their leather jackets and black turtlenecks, and they all went to Sacramento and they stood on the steps of Sacramento with shotguns and guns held high. We got just as much a right to do this as you do. And nobody got shot. So I gave him some props for that.
Okay. So Dad, I'm gonna not to cut you off, but we're gonna bring the conversation back another time, right? And so we're gonna discuss some of the things that we talked to you about, right? And just where we're at. But thanks again for talking to us and giving us that information.
Yeah, we greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, big time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, it was good talking to you guys and letting you know, man. There's no other way for you to know unless somebody gives you a first-hand account of what happened.
Exactly,
yeah.
Exactly. And this is important. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do to be continued, so we can further the conversation and get more information as we continue to catalog a lot of the information that we're going to be getting. All right? So I'll call you back, Dad. Thanks a lot.
All right. Have a good night.
All right.
Bro, my mind's blown right now. That was far more. I got far more out of that than I anticipated to. You know, from perspective to nuances of the times, right, to having an understanding that this was only 70 years ago, the most, if that. Many of these people are still alive, right, if not in leadership positions.
My dad just turned 69 this year, right?
Man,
so he just turned 69, and so this is the time. Like, I have the most amazing relationship. Well, I had the most amazing relationship with my grandmother and my grandfather. So my grandfather was in the Navy, and some of the stories that he would tell me when I was younger, right? I never got to talk to him as a grown man, and that's what I missed, right? And so some of the stories that they could tell you, like my grandfather was the first black Teamster in California, right? And so he would tell my mother stories about them sabotaging his truck and causing it to flip over and almost killing him on several occasions.
Jeez.
Right? And so, and even in the military, how racist it was in what he had to put up with. But then when I look back at that and say, for them to go through this and be able to navigate this country at such a horrific time.
Right?
Yep. And then raise children to be successful and not put that burden on us. That's, to me, where success is. Not somebody handing you $1 million because you didn't even work for it, right?
Yeah.
The thought that our parents were not allowed to buy homes in certain areas, but now our parents own homes in whatever area they want to, right?
Right.
The thought of that, being born into that, and then being able to overcome just tremendous obstacles and odds, and then create success and wealth for yourself and your family. I think that's one of the most amazing takeaways from all of our families that I'm getting, and I just didn't hear the story, and I want us to be able to catalog this, right?
Right.
And I keep hearing, like, my father never told me you pick cotton in the second grade.
That is crazy. The thing that I heard from what he said, which rang really loud, and I was having a conversation on Facebook about it today, is the fact that still to this day, and obviously it was even before his time, that we're still arguing about our humanity.
Yeah.
We still have to have conversations about my dignity.
Right.
My right to be alive, my value, me being human just like you. And when he said that there were so many people a part of the cause, so Martin had his place, Medgar Evers had his place, Malcolm had his place. That's really what caught my attention. Like, that's something that I had a conversation about in 2019, and it's something he was talking about in 1956.
Nah, it's powerful.
In second grade, Same conversation.
Same exact. Nothing as far as that has changed. You're still trying to prove that you're intelligent, or you can be as successful, or you are as talented.
Not even to that point, to that degree. Just the fact that I bleed too, I cry too, I'm meaningful too, I'm valuable too. Like, let's even set aside the fact that all three of us are superb in terms of talent, in terms of compassion, in terms of what we can do, our intelligence. Forget all that.
Right.
When it boils all down to it, like if something happened right now and Chris passed away, you passed away, like you're a human being. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so the fact that I still have to even acknowledge that I'm superior in one way or talented in one way or another, that I have to prove to you that I have some worth because I'm smart, because I'm talented, is crazy to me.
It's super crazy.
I honestly think that comes from an inferiority complex, and that's why why white supremacists do it, but not all white people do that, right? Correct. And I think when you feel, or when you know you're inferior to somebody, you try to make up all these things that way you can feel like you have a fair playing field with them. Right. And somebody has to prove themselves, but like, because you're okay financially, you don't walk around and talk down to people on the street because they're living on the street. Obviously, it's not a competition, right?
Right. Yeah. Why would I do that?
Right. But they do that with you because they already know that they're not on that level. Whether it comes to intellect or just being capable of overcoming something, right?
So they had to be given something.
Right. And so you have to be given a handout because you can't compete, right? But then in just not competing, you're going to tell me all these things to try to prevent me from trying to compete with you, right? I'm not intelligent. I'm not allowed to compete.
Correct. Some people are just going to mail it in.
Right.
Just from hearing that.
You get what I'm saying? Yeah, a lot of people, most people are going to mail it in just from that. Like, right, if you say,
odds.
Right. Yeah. If you feel the odds are against you, you're not going to make the attempt, most people, right?
Yeah.
There are some people who are like, well, let me try it, right?
Yeah.
1 in a million is still one,
There were so many powerful things in that just short conversation. Mm-hmm. But one thing I want to kind of make sure we definitely stress on was one thing I didn't hear was victimhood.
No.
One thing I didn't hear was victim. I'm talking about, in the heart of Texas, picking cotton at second grade.
Right.
Seeing what they did to Kennedy, seeing what they did in this town, seeing how the propaganda machine was just like, that was it. Like, there was no way you could avoid it. They ran that.
Right.
Seeing all of those things in his voice, I didn't hear somebody that was like a victim. I just heard, this is what we did to survive. This is what we did to navigate and maneuver through this. And it's like, for him to be alive today and to see where we are in regards to, I guess, even though there's much more room for growth, but where we are in terms of a community as a whole, in terms of not just success, because it seems to me just listening to him, it wasn't that people wasn't smart or people weren't making their money, people weren't getting what they needed to get. It's just the road they traveled to get there was one filled with tremendous peril.
Right.
But today, I think the road is still filled with tremendous peril. It's taking on new forms.
Correct.
But now, did you peep when he said that they didn't really segregate in his town, in Austin or Houston or Dallas or anything like that. He said that they wouldn't play with each other or against each other. Now he was talking about sports, right?
Correct.
But when I heard that, I was thinking even deeper than that. I was thinking it was a lot of that as well that was causing, like the same way you hear things like black on black crime, white on white crime, or things that happen to us in particular. I think a lot of that was rooted in that as well, and that's also intentional by our government,
right,
to keep us apart from each other, because you are, things like that are going to happen to whoever you live by,
correct,
or whoever but we technically live by each other on purpose. Not on purpose in terms of like by choice, but on purpose as in like this is by design.
Right.
So it makes sense, and he wasn't necessarily touching on that, but he did without even having to.
Right. Even if we look at redlining, I mean, that alone explains if blacks and Latins are unable to purchase homes because they're unable to get insurance for those homes in these areas, but they can live in these areas, right? That's you putting that in place, saying, you know what, there are no black people allowed here.
Yeah.
And I mean, we still deal with that now, you know, whether or not people want to admit it. We're still dealing with that. But that is a design. When you say black people can only live in one area, you're designing that area only for black people.
Yeah.
Right? And so what are you going to do to the water and to the pain and stuff like that if you design that for the people that you despise?
You're not going to give it your best.
No. Matter of fact, you're going to put lead in the water. You're going to put lead in the paint.
You're going to give it your worst.
Right. You're going to poison as much as you can in those communities because that's where the highest concentration of those people are.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you look at lead poisoning in our community, it's been horrific. And then one of the side effects of lead poisoning is violent behavior because it prevents your brain from developing properly. Right? And so we're all concentrated in a certain area. Did you see when Flint, when it came out that Flint, Michigan, the water was so bad, people are dying from the lead that's in the water, right? Yeah. It came out that the water was so bad that they know that the crime rate is going to go up in Flint within a certain amount of time because those babies or those children that are bathing in that water or drinking that water are going to have mental issues because your brain's not going to develop the same way.
That's insane.
Right? And so when we look at crime in our community, right, we're dealing with that on top of everything else. Right, but nobody's talking about that.
Because that's going to go over people's heads.
Yeah,
but you're speaking on a basic scientific level that there's that. But see, a lot of people don't want to own that up too, because that's something that will be used against us as well.
You remember Freddie Gray that was killed in Baltimore, right? Did you know his family had already sued the city for lead poisoning, and they won? His mom had a settlement with the city because he had lead poisoning prior to them killing him.
Wow.
Right? And so he had an arrest record, right? And so they're looking at him as a criminal, but they know for a fact that he had lead poisoning, and so this is what he's dealing with. And so he's dealing with developmental issues as a grown man where your brain hadn't developed the same as ours has, right?
Right.
And so there's still a childlike mentality. Right, and so you're doing certain things or committing crimes. Yeah, so I mean, if you just look up lead poisoning and the side effects of that alone, because it prevents your brain from developing, and that's such a horrific thing that they've done in our community. Because remember, lead was in the paint on the wall.
Yeah,
I have to do a lead paint disclosure if the house was built at a certain time to let people know that this house may be.
Yeah.
With lead on the wall,
because not only can you die, but you can really have some serious side effects from lead poisoning.
They were poisoning people with their homes,
right? But even think about the ghetto period. If you think about how New York is, where they have these the projects where you have high rises, right, and you have tons of people in there, all of that. Think about how many families you would have.
The whole
right?
thing.
You poison the whole thing, and so some kids are gonna have. It's gonna affect them much worse than others.
Right.
But you're still trying to poison them all.
And that's the spirit of that. That's what when people say like when you could just feel the difference or whatever.
Oh yeah.
That's that difference you're feeling, or at least that's part of it.
That's part of it. That's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
And then you got to think about just the external. So that's internal. The external part of it is, guess what? Now we're grown men. You bring 3 other grown men in here, I'm losing some of this. Right. I'm losing some elbow room. Right.
Yeah.
I need space.
Yeah.
Right. So at some point in time, be like, all right, it's getting a little hot. I might do like this. All right. Y'all good? You bring 3 other grown men in here. Now it's 9 of us in here.
Yeah.
Let one of us disagree about something. And we're intelligent.
Yeah.
It may be a little issue. It's 9 grown men. And how big would you guys say this is?
Yeah. I get it. The space is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And
so just imagine people in a situation with no money, no hope, poison in the food. We didn't get to that. Poison in the water. The walls that they're enclosed, poison. What do you expect to happen?
That's insane.
Yeah, but see, it goes even further, right? And so, what did my father say? Alcohol, right? That was a horrible thing. And so my father doesn't drink because he watched this growing up, and the car accidents, they were dying every day. People were dying in car accidents because they were allowed to drink and drive and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But they used alcohol against the native people as well, right? And so when you look at the amount of liquor stores that we deal with in our community, there are no black gun manufacturers, but for some reason everybody got guns.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you put all of this, right, this is going to explode.
Absolutely.
There's no way you come out okay from situations like this.
This is why this conversation is important. It's not about necessarily the fact that there's so much turmoil and opposition and so many roadblocks in the way. It's the overcoming of all of these things. If when you think about what we're talking about, and for us to be in the position that we're in, my father grew up in the projects, and we'll get to his story at some point. But to think about all these things that they all had to deal with on some level, even if you were, in a situation as an affluent black person, whatever that meant, you still had to deal with being a nigga.
That's crazy.
Another thing that stood out to me is Lyndon Johnson owning the only television station.
That was huge.
Bro, you control everything, all the messaging.
There was no internet.
Right.
There was no any of that. So whatever that message was
And do
pushed.
you know what one of his most famous quotes said? That he'll have us voting for Democrats for the next 100 years just because he gave us civil rights. That don't sound like a man that's on our side. That sounds like a man positioning himself politically to do whatever the hell you want, to control the message and to control the narrative. That's what that sounds like to me. Yeah, you was the successor to Kennedy, but you don't sound like a friend by saying that we will be voting for you for a particular reason, not necessarily a good one, just because you gave us civil rights.
And even with that, nobody gave us civil rights.
We fought for that.
Right. And this is how you control the narrative, right? So we freed the slaves.
Had them niggas voting for me 100 years.
You didn't free the slave. We had to fight, right? And so you forced us to fight in every war. You forced us to fight for everything we have. But in the way you word it is, I gave you, or we did this for you.
Listen, man, we just had that controversy with the Betsy Ross flag in Colin, and there's such a debate. Oh, it doesn't mean that, and so on and so forth. Here we are. We talking about not when the Betsy Ross flag was waving. We talking about 70 years ago.
Right.
The type of situation people of color were living in. So I mean, I don't even know why this was a back and forth. Like, there's no reason to mass produce Air Maxes with a flag that people were still owning slaves legally in America during.
Right.
Simple as that. And by the time there was a whole brand new flag, black people or people of color in this country still weren't getting their fair share and still weren't being treated right. So, the new iteration still didn't mean that.
Right.
And it's like, I think we understand it because we have a view of or a glimpse of what reality was like back then, but hearing it from your father in such great detail, and like, to be honest, he really could have just spoke the whole show, to be honest, because he was kicking knowledge. But to hear it on that level, even like how he explained how, I went and took the test, but I didn't want him to think I was dumb.
But a lot of them would do that.
Bro, that struck a chord with me. It was like he knew that by doing well on the test, he's risking the fact that he might end up going to war.
Something he didn't want to do.
So he's saying he would rather go to prison.
He'd rather go to prison, correct? And like, to say, like, that's how much we overcame as a society, where it was like,
that's what I want acknowledged, because we look at, oh wow, if you let's say Steve Jobs, wow, he's super successful, and that's what we look at as success, and you don't see all the help that was from the government and everybody else, right? And then we look at our parents and we're like, yeah, they helped us get here, and you don't realize the success of overcoming I don't know how many obstacles on a daily basis just from feeling a certain way and not getting strung out or drunk or
his life sounded like a movie.
And it's so much more than that. Even so, he was alluding to the Neiman Marcus case, right? So when that happened, he wouldn't allow us to go to the malls at all.
Wow.
Because he was like, if they do that to you, I'm going to prison.
Yeah.
So you guys just stop with that.
Wow.
Right? And so I'm in high school, but I'm not allowed to go to the mall because my dad is like, he's not having it.
He's not having it.
He's just not having it because of the way he was treated. And so then it came out in court that a part of their manual was they were supposed to treat us a certain way.
Oh, snap.
And we'll get in that. This is in the news now, so you can pull this up.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll definitely talk about it.
Channel 7, it was all in the news, right? And so it was the largest settlement for a retail store in the state. I think in the country at that time.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, just to think
I don't
about.
know, I feel like I got a lot from this conversation. And I mean, for anybody that's paying attention to this podcast, man, if this is the direction that we're going with this, man, this is going to be this is important.
It's going to get deeper because we're going to have different perspectives, right? And so we overlook our parents' struggles much.
We do.
Right?
Because of the protection.
Because they protected us, right? When somebody's good at protecting, right? And that's another successful thing. Like the most successful people I know are people who were born in the 50s and 60s and made it to today. And I see the success. I'm not talking financially. I'm talking about overcoming.
Yeah.
Right?
That's deep.
These people had no handouts. None. Nobody ever gave my father. I know for a fact they worked for everything, right? Because I watched them. And so when I'm looking at success, imagine if somebody gave my father $400 million.
What?
Right? He might be a trillionaire.
It makes. I get it. No,
400,000.
I understand 100%, and that's something that people bring up sometimes, and I know it hurts. I know it hurts the establishment. I know it hurts the powers that be to hear that because they know it's true.
Yeah, it's facts.
And you know when you hear stuff like
Trump got a small loan of $1 million, and we know it was more than that, and he's still a failure.
Correct. Well, hey, that's subjective to some degree.
Yeah. Well,
you know, he may be a failure in regards to his ventures that he's done have all collapsed to some certain degree.
Right.
But he found a way to pimp the country, and I mean, I'm not saying I gotta give him my respect, like for example, but at the end of the day, he did pull off that, and he
pulled off a heist. I give him that.
Yeah, you know that's how I look at that.
But I don't never say a bank robber is successful though.
Thank you.
Right. So if you're looking at a criminal as being successful, that's a different conversation.
That's a different conversation.
So my narrative is somebody coming to this country making a life your father.
Yeah.
That like you won't meet somebody more successful than that unless they've traveled that road and were able to accomplish that.
Yep.
Right. And so we don't give enough respect to that. That to me, that is celebrity, right? That is success. If I see you and you've got, government grants and all this stuff for, matter of fact, Trump's father got a lot of minority grants for the buildings in New York.
Yeah.
Right. And so he was getting grants that were supposed to be for minorities. They were actually getting those. Right. And so I'm looking at that from a standpoint of giving, somebody who actually started a business, ran it to the point like a Master P. Imagine if he got just handouts.
I mean, we watched Pursuit of Happiness, right? And that was just about, a black man getting an opportunity.
Right, just an opportunity.
You know what I mean? Just an opportunity. Right. And it's amazing. So I just sit there thinking like, yeah, man, if they made a movie with my dad or if they made a movie with your dad or can you imagine? All they need is the right script.
Just need an opportunity, right? And so, but without even that opportunity, they're still extremely successful.
We out here giving people the cheat codes, man. Because if they just go out there and they talk to their dad and they write down what happened, they got a movie on their hand. Right.
You might look at and you made a point where you said not being the victim.
Yeah. Now,
right?
Listen, this guy's talking about picking cotton at 6 years old.
Yeah.
Right? And I didn't hear bitterness.
No.
I didn't hear hatred in his voice. Are you kidding me? Meanwhile, I see people with all of the privilege on the planet speaking with vitriol about things like the squad and what we just went through this week. You got to be kidding me, man.
That alone, the failure of being able to communicate and actually understanding somebody else's perspective. My father went through all that. Guess what? You don't hate white people. It's not black and white, right?
Yeah.
There's white supremacists, and then there are white people.
Yep.
They're not the same, right? You can go through all that and still not be racist and be bitter and hateful and a victim, You know what I'm saying? And still have your success. And the only way you're going to find that success is if you can overcome that without boxing everybody in one group and having that hatred. So when you see people speaking like that, the fact that they can't even communicate properly or don't understand who you are or they are, you've already failed.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right. So, I don't know, man. I'm excited. I want to see where this is gonna go.
Yeah, I didn't expect that turn.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you,
this is gonna get. I didn't hear that, Pop. You know,
yeah.
So for that to be this type of conversation, you know, I can only imagine when I have my conversation and we talk to uncles and mentors of ours, and they tell us something we've never heard. You know, it's gonna be a very interesting.
And I just want us to think.
Situation.
I don't want us to have an opinion. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because a person's path or however they've had to go through life, that's just their experience. You can't have an opinion of my experience.
Correct.
Right? You can break it down and kind of say, Jesus, wonder what that was like. But the intelligent way is really to analyze that time period, right, and what that person went through. And that's really what I want people to do.
Context is everything.
Right. Context is everything. So I just want people to be able to analyze what we're talking about without becoming opinionated and having these, you know, back and forth with each other. It's just a listening kind of a thing for us.
Of course.
Absolutely. All right. Well, is there anything we want to say before we wrap up, or?
No, I mean, I just want to say thanks to everybody for listening. That's my spiel. I appreciate my brothers, Chris and
he Mr. forgot my name.
Oh, no, I was going to say Mr., but I was like, I didn't say Mr. Jacques.
Yeah,
so I was like, so, you know, I appreciate having my brothers with me on this. These are two of the most intelligent brothers I know, and that's why, for me, it would really only work if we have those that we, you know, intellectually can have a conversation like this with.
Yeah, we can't talk to everybody.
Oh, the respect is mutual.
Right.
And I'll say this, man. This is gonna be amazing, and I feel like I gained a lot from this conversation. I just want to say thank you for even bringing this to the forefront. I hope the people who listen to this podcast enjoyed it and got some gems. But it's just the beginning. We're gonna dive deeper into our next conversations. What about you, Brandon? Anything you want to say?
I just want to say I can't wait to continue. That's all I really got to say. You know, let's just put the cherry on top and go ahead and close this one on out.
All right.
Yeah. Now where the truth in this, I need some proof in this, at least a witness will make some sense of this business. You know the system we address with cynicism. Lord knows that someone's sinning, selling souls, just a sacrificial lamb to some crooked man's underhanded plan. Judging brothers like you honest, shall I call you honor when the justice escapes? Another cold case got me thinking, am I taking a bait? If I make it about race